Alright, what's happening everybody? It's your boy Keenan. Welcome to today's vlog. We are on week 13 of the college football season, which means this is rivalry week, most exciting games in college football for this season. Now, I'm not going to jump from conference to conferences. I'm just going to really talk about all the key matches this week and switch things up going in the order of the times when these games are going to be played. Starting with on Thursday night, a Thanksgiving game for you guys for college football. Number 16 Texas Longhorns, my Longhorns, is going to be hosting TCU. Now, TCU has been a little bit shaky ever since they lost troubled quarterback Casey Paul, but I think they have a decent freshman quarterback in Trevon Boykin, who has over 1,500 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. But they're going to be playing against a tough Longhorn team who has been on fire with 4 straight wins ever since that humiliating loss in the Red River Rivalry against Oklahoma, 63-21, and they have been bouncing back great. I'm going to have to go with my Longhorns in this one. This is going to be a good game, a good prepared matchup for Kansas State in that final week. Next game we need to talk about, heading to the MAC Conference. Kent State, the number 23 third-ranked team in the nation, is going to be hosting Ohio. Now, I had Ohio as a chance of going undefeated this season, but they blew things up within their conference with quarterback Tyler Tettleton. Now, this can be an upset for Kent State, but I'm going to actually stick with the Kent State team right now because of Dre Archer. He's a big-time home run threat. Every time he touches the football, averages well over 7 yards per carry. He is a great running back, one of the best explosive running backs in college football, seriously, period. Next game we need to talk about, headed into the Big Ten Conference. This is not a big rivalry matchup. Number 14, Nebraska, is going to be playing against at Iowa. Now, this is going to be an important battle for the Cornhuskers because if they win, they will represent that Legends division and make it to the Big Ten Championship over Michigan. I'm going to have to go with the Cornhuskers in this one. I think this should be an easy win against a struggling Iowa team. Next game we need to talk about, next game we need to talk about, headed to the SEC Conference. A great game between these two teams. Arkansas hosting LSU. Now, for over the years, Arkansas and LSU have been duking things out, and they have been having some great games. But I'm going to have to stick with LSU in this one because Arkansas has been very disappointing, the most disappointing team in the SEC Conference. This should be an easy win for LSU. Next game we need to talk about, Apple Cup between Washington, 25th ranked team in the nation, back in the top 25 against Washington State. Now, Washington State has been dealing with a lot of problems this season. They're going to lose their key receiver, Marquise Wilson, who has walked out on the team, and because he just feels uncomfortable at Washington State, he really thinks that the coaches belittle him, and Coach Mike Ilitch actually fired back and said he actually does not understand where that is coming from. But I think Washington State is going to try to bounce back, but this is going to be a tough matchup against a good Washington team. I really think Washington's going to spank the Cougars in this matchup. I had to call this game out because this is a rivalry, an in-state rivalry game. Next game we need to talk about, the biggest rivalry in college football, Michigan at Ohio State. Now, I don't really have this as my game of the week because Ohio State is banned this season. They're undefeated, but these games is really going to mean nothing to them because this is going to be their final game of the season because they're banned for postseason play. I'm going to have to go with Ohio State in this one, ruining things for Michigan. Now, Denard Robinson, he can be back from an elbow injury, but they have a good freshman quarterback, and Devon Gardner, he's been leading this team to a couple of great comeback victories. I like this Michigan team, but I think Ohio State staying undefeated. The defense is performing pretty well, and Braxton Miller has been doing a Heisman-like performance this season in college football. Next game we need to talk about, another in-state rivalry for the Governor's Cup between Georgia against Georgia Tech. Now, both these two teams, this is going to be a warm-up matchup for them, even though this is a huge rivalry for them. This is a warm-up matchup for both of these teams because, respectively, they're both going to be heading to their conference championship, the SEC championship for Georgia and ACC championship for Georgia Tech. Now, this is going to be an easy pick for me. I'm going to have to go with Georgia in this one. Georgia Tech's triple option threat can be a big problem for Georgia, but I think they're going to stick to their assignments. That defense has been doing pretty good this season for the Bulldogs. I'm going to have to go with Georgia over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, making their way to the SEC championship and playing either Alabama or probably Texas A&M, and I'll let you know that later on in this vlog. Next game, we need to talk about another in-state rivalry between Virginia at Virginia Tech. Now, this season is pretty much over for Virginia. They're 4-7. They're not going to be able to make it to a bowl game, ineligible, but they're looking forward to taking Virginia Tech with them and ruining their season with this rivalry matchup. Now, Virginia Tech, they came off of a good overtime win over Boston College. They're looking to rekindle that, everything on that, and build the momentum in this matchup. Now, this is going to be a tough game, but I'm going to have to go with the Hokies in this one, only because offensively they've been having better receivers than Virginia. This is going to be a close battle, but I think the Hokies are going to pull off a big, close escape in this matchup. Next game, we need to talk about the Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. Auburn, another disappointing team in the SEC Conference, but they play hard against a good Crimson Tide team, even though Crimson Tide has been beating them for the past 2 seasons. Now, I'm going to go with Alabama in this one because they're the number 2 ranked team in the nation and looking to make their way back into the SEC Championship. All they do need is to get that win, but this is going to be a tough battle for the Crimson Tide, but I think the Crimson Tide is going to win, making it to the SEC Championship against Georgia. Next game, we need to talk about another in-state rivalry between number 4 Florida and number 10 Florida State. 2 top 10 opponents, and they're looking to get a BCS at large, particularly for Florida, because they're not going to be making it to the SEC Championship, so they need this win. Now, for Florida State, they're going to make it to the ACC Championship, and if they do win the championship, they will get the automatic bid for a BCS Bowl matchup. But for Florida, they're going to be playing for an at-large bid for the BCS Bowl games. Now, for this matchup, I'm going to have to go with Florida State because I think their defense is just a little bit more crisp than Florida. Florida does have a great defense, but they struggled against Louisiana Lafayette, and there's a little bit of a quarterback problem with Jeff Driscoll still dealing with a foot injury, and we're not sure how well he's going to perform in this matchup. I'm unsure with that, so I'm going to have to go with Florida State in that matchup. Next game we need to talk about, number 21 Oklahoma State is going to be at Norman to face arch rival Oklahoma. I'm going to have to go with the Sooners in this one. Quarterback Landry Jones had an explosive matchup last week, over 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think he is back, and I think he's going to have another good matchup against the Oklahoma State team in his last game in college football. I think he's going to have a big game in the Big 12 Conference. This is not his last game, but his last regular season game. This is going to be a great matchup to watch. Now, I'm going to head over back to the Big 10. Wisconsin's going to be playing at Penn State. This is going to be a warm-up for Wisconsin. Penn State is actually having a better record than, just as good as a record as the Badgers, but they're not qualified to make it to the Big 10 championship like Ohio State. So Wisconsin still already has that leader's nod, and I really think this is going to be a good game. I think Monty Ball's going to have another 100-yard matchup against this Nittany Lion team. I'm going to have to go with Wisconsin over Penn State. Now, I have a couple of games left, a couple of other big games I need to talk about. Headed over to the Pac-12 conference between number 8 Stanford and number 17 UCLA. This is going to be an important matchup for the Cardinals. They need to get this win in order to make it to the Pac-12 championship, in which they're going to play UCLA again if they do win this matchup. Now, I'm going to have to go with Stanford in this one because they really need this win, and that defense is explosive. They had a great defense overall this season, holding on to Oregon Ducks to just 14 points when they average over 50 points a game, and they held them to just 14 points. I think they're going to have another dominant game. Their biggest threat that they need to worry about is running back Jonathan Franklin of the Brewers. Now, this is going to be a good matchup and a preview of the Pac-12 championship, so this could be a good wake-up call, note-taking game for UCLA for their Pac-12 championship. That is if Stanford wins this matchup. Next game, we need to talk about a big-time South Carolina rivalry between South Carolina and Clemson. Clemson is looking to get an at-large bid of these BCS bowl games as well. They only have 1 loss, while South Carolina is doing the same. But I'm going to go with Clemson in this one. Their offense is just a little bit better than South Carolina. South Carolina's been dealing with a lot of injuries offensively with Marcus Lattimore and even quarterback Connor Shaw, even though he's going to start in this matchup. I think Taj Boyd's going to have a good game connecting with DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins. And running back Andre Ellington, I still think he's a little bit overrated. I think people are going to forget about him. He could be due for a good game as well. He needs to get back in shape. I think he's a lot better than those numbers that you see. We're going to head over to the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State at Ole Miss. Now, both these two teams are going to be fighting hard in this matchup. Now, Ole Miss actually fought hard against LSU and they lost last week, and they're looking to beat Mississippi State, at least beat that rivalry. But I'm going to have to go with the Bulldogs in this one because their defense overall is a little bit better than Ole Miss. Next game we need to talk about, number 1 Notre Dame is going to be traveling at USC. Now, this should be a pretty simple game for Notre Dame because they do not have to worry about quarterback Matt Barkley, who will not be available, which means Max Wittek will get that starting off for the Trojans at quarterback. Even though they have a lot of weapons, they have an inexperienced quarterback, and I think that Notre Dame's going to capitalize on that. I'm going to have to go with the Fighting Irish, staying undefeated and making it to the national championship. And last but not least, the game of the week, number 5 Oregon at number 15 Oregon State, the Civil War. Both these two players are going to be playing for the Platte Post Trophy. Now this is going to be a great matchup to watch. Oregon State, they having a great season, just 2 losses in this year, 8-2, while Oregon suffered their first defeat last week against Stanford. They need to get back in shape, and I think they're going to do well in this matchup, but they're playing against a tough Oregon State defense. This is a big rivalry, and Oregon State is looking forward to ruining everything for the Oregon Ducks. Now I'm going to have to go with the Ducks in this one. They need to get that tempo ready in offense, that quick, fast-paced tempo, and get everything together. I think they're going to have a good game against Oregon State, good enough to beat this game and hopefully hope for Stanford to lose to UCLA. Now the next time I'm going to catch you guys is on Monday to give you a recap of this week's games. Now we're going to have Thanksgiving tomorrow. I hope everybody have a blessed day, spend time with your family, and enjoy a lot of football, particularly in the NFL. And I will give you guys a preview for this week, for week 12 of the NFL season. Thank you for watching today's vlog, and I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.